All right, hello. My name is William Merrick, and I manage the veterinary business for Imbed BIOSCIENCES. I'm going to present to you today MicroLyte VET, wound care technology invented by veterinarians for veterinarians, really to solve at first the question of how can we heal wounds better. I'm going to start off just introducing the company. Really, probably haven't heard of Imbed BIOSCIENCES before, but I think by the end of this, you'll be pretty interested in the work they're doing, at least from a wound care perspective. Founded by veterinarians, a trauma surgeon, and some material science folks getting together and thinking about how can we really make an advancement in wound care. Thinking about the problems there, and really they ended up approaching it differently, coming at it from the perspective of changing the terrain. Really, how do we re-engineer the wound bed itself instead of thinking about it as treating it with something, right? So they set about that, and it quickly then became an engineering problem, and then eventually they did develop a technology, patent, and then moved into getting FDA clearance. In 2016, the product was FDA cleared, MicroLyte, and at that point they could start bringing it to people. Since then, we've built up to about 25 employees. We even added some staff this year, more folks on the human side, sales, and then also in our manufacturing, just all throughout the company, growing, and myself as well just over a year ago. So, now we're really doubling down our efforts in veterinary, and teaming up also with Jorgensen, MWI, and will soon, I'm sure, be available through all the distributors. But we continue to innovate. NIH and NSF grant funding, going after biofilm, and looking at other projects as well, all around wound care and embedding, changing that terrain. And these are a couple of the DVM co-founders here. Dr. John McAnulty is still at University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Veterinary Medicine, and Dr. Chris Murphy there in UC Davis. He was at UW-Madison at the time of the founding of the company. And if you want to learn more about Imbed Bio, imbedbio.com. So just for context, I'm sure you're familiar with wound healing, and so I'll move past this stuff pretty quick, but in that inflammatory phase, we know that wounds can stall due to a bio burden, bacteria, biofilm, get in there and keep the wound from moving past that inflammatory phase and eventually healing. And so these are a few pictures from early cases that kind of representative of the ideal case for MicroLyte, or the case where you definitely want to use it. We would say you want to use it from day one, prevent the infection. These were cases where infection had set in, and then MicroLyte took care of it. And so we know that bacteria can be introduced in this surgical or post during that initial trauma. Exposure to foreign bodies, that bacteria can lead to stalled out healing, prolonged wound therapy, ultimately client dissatisfaction. They're concerned, they're coming in and it's not getting better. So how do we change that? We can talk first about really the goals in wound management. We want to prevent that bacterial growth, eliminate that bioburden. At the same time, we want to prevent cell toxicity and those toxic side effects systemically. We also want something that's going to be effective against the resistant strains, and also have it be easy to apply and cost effective. And currently, really none of these current approaches bring all of that together. Some of them are highly effective, but they might be toxic. Others might not be all that effective, but they're cost effective. Manuka honey is great for a lot of applications, but it might not pack the punch, and it certainly isn't going to last for all that long before it's either soaked up into the bandage. Silver sulfadiazine actually turns out in our in vitro studies, we didn't find any effect antimicrobially, but it may, because it's cream, act to maintain that moist wound bed. And other silver dressings can come along with toxicity at the cell surface. We're really talking about cytotoxicity there. Also possible systemic, but they can also be very costly too. So that's why the inventors were looking at this, and really nothing addresses all of those concerns in wound management. And so they came up with MicroLyte VET. And what they came up with here was this film. Some people relate it to a Listerine strip. In some sense it's like that, but it does last, of course, a lot longer, up to 3 days, we can say. That's according to our FDA indication as well, by the way. And for that entire 3 days, you're getting 99.99% kill rate, including on MRSA, VRE, all these bad actors. And we're using very low amounts of silver, low concentrations, and soon we'll get into why that's possible. It absorbs completely within a week, nothing to remove, and that matrix is basically an artificial substrate. It's a sacrificial substrate that the cells can grow through. Two things to point out here. Well, there's the water uptake, but also it's a non-occlusive barrier. So, we're maintaining that moist wound environment, but also we're allowing that wound to breathe. So you're still going to get vapor transmission, oxygen transmission, which you really want to have, especially right there at the cell surface. And there's an illustration of the MicroLyte at that wound surface, conforming intimately, and then that means we can use far less silver, so it's powerful against the bacteria, but it's safe on the skin. And if we were to zoom in to that layer, we would see, one layer is what you can really feel when you're handling the product, is that layer of polyvinyl alcohol, and that's what's very hydrophilic. That's going to soak up water, and you'll see in a video soon how it really sucks down into all the nooks and crannies of that wound bed, really gets down in there, and it's depositing this polymeric multi-layer matrix that's a nanometer thick. So it's imperceivable, and on its own you couldn't handle it, so they had to add a layer, but that layer actually helps, brings it down into the surface, and then that matrix is actually electrostatically charged. It adheres to the wound bed, and so then you get this stack of bacteria killing silver versus the other products that really, it's like boulders. I mean, they have giant boulders of silver, and it's really bombarding the wound surface with huge amounts of silver, versus that targeted approach of an intimately conforming layer, changing the terrain, creating this defensive matrix that new bacteria would have to get through. They don't have a chance. Existing bacteria at that surface, as it sucks down, as it adheres, is going to confront that bacteria, those colonies on the surface, and totally destroy all that bacteria and change that terrain. And we do so safely. This is us down here. We want to be down here because this is showing a much lower release of silver versus competitive products that can carry along that cytotoxicity. That's why they can't be used, for instance, in third-degree burns or in a prophylactic sense. MicroLyte, totally safe, and degrades over time, right? Again, nothing to remove at the end. And this means no risk of painful debridement. With other products, you might have the wound sort of, growing through, and then you're going to debride some healthy tissue. We don't want that. At first, we want to do no harm, and MicroLyte fulfills that promise while killing all the bad actors. And when I say it's killing the bad actors, it's really doing it. It's broad spectrum, gram-positive, gram-negative, yeast even, and doing it sustained 72 hours. This is this is some of our data that went to the FDA for our 510K, and no one else can show something like this. 24 hours, 72 hours, sustained performance against all of these bacteria and fungi. And that log greater than 4 log 10. 4 log 10, 99.99% reduction. So, you're talking some of these, it's practically all, right? That kill power sustains through 72 hours, and in the meantime, as it absorbs into dilution, it actually is going to start allowing cells to grow. And that's what we see here. 100% MicroLyte. Once you're down to 50% MicroLyte, you're getting positive growth. These other products, they have that cell toxicity here. And this is fibroblasts. They're killing the fibroblasts. They're killing the bacteria, sure, but they're also killing fibroblasts. They're also killing good cells. So for us, that's not the case. That's why we say it's safe on skin. And you'll see a lot of other folks who will talk about the safety of silver. They'll talk about it in a context of systemic toxicity. The local toxicity that we care about in terms of wound management is the cytotoxicity at that site. The cells that we want to proliferate are being held back by these treatments. With MicroLyte, that's not the case. I like to say that we get out of the way, we let the body do what it does, which is to heal. And so I'll show you here a video of MicroLyte being applied. Michigan State University. This is Bryden Stanley, Dr. Bryden Stanley there. She recently retired, but continues to do work in wound care. I actually heard from one of her colleagues yesterday. And there it is, going on this mass removal. And it looks like it just melted right into that wound, right? Not the highest resolution on this one. I'll show you a higher resolution one here in a moment. They're removing the remainder, but you could also fold it in, kind of a waste not, want not, if you wanted to do that. But you can also do this. And now they know that they have a layer over that wound bed that is going to really change the terrain there. It's going to be safe, effective over the course of those 72 hours. This is a little more moist than we might want, but that's what Dr. McAnulty always says anyway, so I like to repeat that. Is, he would say maybe dry that off a little bit more before you apply the MicroLyte. But you can see here, dramatically, it's soaking down into all those little nooks and crannies. And then over the next hour or two, it will adhere electrostatically at that cellular level. It will adhere to that wound bed. And so they'll tile this one up eventually then too, covering the entire surface. And now those, kind of show how it soaks in on its own. But typically what you're going to see is a use of a dry gauze. And this is what Dr. McAnulty recommends. This is what others have been doing. And you kind of encourage it to really just settle down into that wound bed. And then you'll even see, though, after a moment, that it does still, after that, suck down into that wound bed, all those nooks and crannies. You can see it right there. Right there. Look at it go. And now you have a protected wound bed for 72 hours and sustained release until it's fully absorbed, nothing to remove. It just completely goes away. So that is the technology review. I'm going to jump in now to some case studies, and I'll go through these, for the sake of time, relatively quickly. If you have questions, feel free to reach out on our website, MicroLyteVet.com, info@MicroLyteVet.com, or ImbedBio.com also will get you there through the veterinary link. Of course, our Facebook page too, you can follow us there. And we'll jump into some case studies. This was just this year, Colorado wildlife department, hit by car, a bear cub, showing the before and after with the application initially. And this wound measured 10 centimeters across this way. You know, and when you have exposed bone, it can be worrisome, right, for infection. So completely covered with MicroLyte, and they continue to apply it every few days. A month later, 4 centimeters, so about 1/4 of the size overall, or even a little less. I believe after about a week after this, they ended up healing by second intention. I so much wanted to get a video of that little bear cub trotting around all healed up and happy, but we can all just imagine that. We know that happened after this was all set. And the story here, you know, is we're changing the game from it might get infected to let's prevent it from ever getting infected, from ever stalling out at all. Let's create that safe surface for the cells to grow through and for the body to do its thing. Let's stay out of the way and change that surface. Let the body do what it does, which is to heal. And in Australia, I think I mentioned earlier, Australia wildfires, the California wildfires too. One of the big things that I heard from them, what they were saying was handling the wildlife, especially with anesthesia, it's really tough on them. So being able to apply the MicroLyte gave them the confidence that they could go a full week before they would handle them again. And that's great for the patient in these cases especially. And after 1 week, this is what they were seeing. And so MicroLyte quickly became the most requested product of its type in terms of, you know, being a primary layer in handling these burns. And Vets for Compassion down there, along with Dr. Paul Ramos, Dr. Jamie Payton, a few among many who were down there. Dr. Danielle Oakley, Yukon vet, she was using it. Many others using it down there. Hundreds of cases. And it really, they loved it, especially for that reason, having that confidence that it'll prevent any kind of infection from setting in and give those patients their space. Similar thing with Bobcat here, California more recently. And on to this one here, pretty dramatic injury, actually a necrotic tissue caused by the foot being strangled by the dog's own hair. Presented for a check nails, but after they noticed what was going on with that matted hair, they sedated, shaved, and after debridement, it was like this. Rather serendipitously, Dr. Godolph, owner of the Animal Hospital Montgomery, Alabama, had received his MicroLyte in late June, and all of a sudden, just over a week later, this case shows up. And he reached out to me and said, I've got this case, this is amazing. Look at how it's healing without any kind of infection. At first we thought that we were gonna lose the foot. You know, they're thinking, we'll do what we can. You know, infection might set in, and at some point, we're looking at possible amputation. They saved the foot. After August 22nd here, 6 weeks later, they healed by second intention. And so here we just have a picture showing the MicroLyte applied. You can see again how it gets into all those nooks and crannies. Again, right, take care of the bad actors, prevent any bacteria from setting in and taking up residence in that wound bed, especially with something like this. But C-sections as well, colic incisions, you know, surgeries where there's a chance. It's a worthwhile insurance policy in those cases because a dehiscence in those cases can be quite an issue. So then October 10th, barely noticeable, just this little scar. I mean, it's just amazing going from that to that in that kind of time frame, you know, and really this initial healing process I bet the pet owners here were just elated. And the patient running around happy again. And that's what we want, right? That's what we want. So what we were confronting early on, this of course before my time at the company, but were these cases where they were not healing. Cases where they didn't have MicroLyte available. And 5 weeks later, they're considering removing this pantarsal arthrodesis. They can't get granulation tissue to crawl up over it. They obviously have infection, cultured positive for MRSA. They're throwing everything at it, So 5 weeks, the owner ended up hearing about MicroLyte, driving up from Ohio 6 hours every day, and getting treatment there. Eventually, they sent him home with a supply once it was good to go. Initially, a lot of wound exodus, so they ended up reapplying MicroLyte daily for the first 3 days. And you look at that, not only do you get the silver nanoparticles, but remember they're suspended in this matrix that acts as that sacrificial substrate. Fibroblasts, epithelial cells will grow right through that, break down and metabolize the MicroLyte. It'll get rid of it, and in the meantime, be able to basically crawl up over that plate. So we take care of the bad stuff, stay out of the way of the good stuff at the same time, and we get these kind of results all the time with a case like this. I see these a lot. Another similar one here, feline Hock fracture, similar kind of repair, similar kind of case, but open for 5 months, not weeks, months. Like that. Older cat, I believe, older cat. And again, everything had failed, but they start using the MicroLyte, and then within a week, all of a sudden, it's looking much better, much better. A month later, practically closed. Go ahead and heal by second intention. And so here we're back to using MicroLyte from basically day one. The first few days or week were iodine sugar solution, systemic antibiotics, because they were, of course, concerned with infection with wounds like these in an attack situation. So they started using the MicroLyte, and then within a couple weeks, they were out of the hospital there. It was quite amazing, this one, with the speed at which that wound healed. But you've got a young animal, and the body is otherwise very healthy. So again, stay out of the way, let the body do its thing, but provide it that assistance to make sure that bacteria doesn't become an issue. And this is particularly an issue in equine, where we have low blood flow to these extremities. We get lacerations, and they can even end up in a case where they're considering euthanasia because it's just been so long and the wound is not healing. And what are you going to do? What are the treatment options here? Now they have an option, a new tool in their toolkit, MicroLyte VET, and they started using it. This one labeled a little differently. The first 18 days here are from the initial injury. Day 18, they start using the MicroLyte. And wound recovered after day 30. No sign of infection after they started using the MicroLyte. Similar, multiple lacerations. If you treat horses, or you know folks who do, then we're looking for more of these case studies, particularly in equine. We get plenty of positive feedback, and I love it. Getting photos, documentation, especially colic surgery. I know that's not what these are covering, these lacerations, but even some of these lacerations, if folks are willing to do some of this documentation, all that, we'll support it with product there. We typically don't do that because we just have so many of these cases, and people still even just do it just because, again, it's, for your clients, right? It's great to be able to see the documented progress. But particularly with these, we'll support a few of them if folks are willing to take some photos and help us out on that front. To share the story, because we have a lot of these stories. We have a lot of them. And this is, I believe, ending on this one here, is just interesting. This is a pretty rare case. Horse with a 5mm oroantral fistula. Dr. Pustella there at UC Davis basically took Surgifoam and made a roll, and he said it was actually like a plug, like a cork, and then wrapped it in MicroLyte, shoved it in there. 1 week later, it was closed. And sometimes it's not about how fast does it heal, but about whether or not it's going to heal at all. So with that, like a good academic, he said N equals 1. This is a direct quote from his email, by the way. Needs more data, but I'm sold on the practicality of the treatment. And we do want more data. Cases like these, surgical cases where we're saying we believe we can reduce that surgical site infection rate. I say I believe we can, because I truly do believe that we will be able to reduce surgical site infection rates. But my belief is one thing, data is another. And so we're building a case registry for 2021. If you do C-sections, if you do colic surgeries, you let us know, and we want to build a formal case registry of those types. And if you have another type of case that you think should apply to that, that we should study, that's sort of outside of this traumatic wound or outside of these case studies that I've shown you already, where we might want to study, is this a proper one? Lick granulomas are another one. Of course, there's complications with those, so with the behavioral stuff, but lick granuloma is another one. And so we continue to do research and development. We continue to look at where can this apply, where can this be most effective and appropriate for you, the veterinarian, to use in your practice. I'm sure it'll be of great value to you for the reasons I've spelled out here today. MicroLyte, it truly is different in that it's going to apply to that wound 72 hours. It's going to change that terrain, making it hospitable for the good cells, inhospitable for the bacteria, so that the wound can heal and do what that body wants to do, which is to heal. So that's my presentation here today. I hope you enjoyed it, learned something, and got some value out of this. If you have any more questions, feel free to give me a call, 608-807-2358. And I'll just do this here right now on the video in live real time. I'll just add my phone number so you can see it. 608-807-2358 is my phone number. My email address, wmerrick@imbedbio.com. And again, MicroLyteVET.com. You can reach us there. You can get the product. You can get MicroLyte VET from MWI, but also now from Jorgensen Laboratories, now carrying it as well. I encourage you, reach out to your distributor. Right now we have a buy two, get one free special through the end of the year this year. So you buy two, you're going to get one. Huge discount. We'll never do that again. And the product lasts a long time on a shelf. You're going to have it for the entire year. And so, guarantee you're going to be able to use it during that time. And if you have any questions, again, give me a call. Thanks again for watching this presentation, and wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate it, and season's greetings either way. So thanks again, and look forward to hearing from you.